This is all about how to recycle, why we recycle, and what happens to your recycling as it's leaving the cart. This presentation is mainly about curbside recycling, so the blue bins that are out in your driveways or the blue dumpsters, and how to prepare recycling correctly, just so it can have that new life and be a part of the circular economy. So my biggest goal today is to demystify recycling for you, because many people have questions about what's going on, what's happening, is recycling happening? And I'm here to reassure you, yes, it is. And then, of course, give you some do's and don'ts for some above and beyond sorting. So what better way to support recycling than to tie it in with America Recycles Day? Happy America Recycles Day. If you haven't heard about America Recycles Day, it is November 15th, so it just passed. And similar to saying like Earth Day is every day, recycling is every day for me and so many others. And just a quick background on where it came from. 1994 began as Texas Recycles Day with employees of the Texas Commission on Environmental Quality, and many states found it to be fantastic, so they wanted to just participate. And so many did that Bill Clinton in 1999 signed a proclamation to make it a national observance. So now it is with us always. And this is a little stat on the right that I got from a colleague. And with your help, WM, just WM, not all the other haulers, just talking about us, we recycled more than 15 million tons of material in 2021, which is amazing. So if you picture all of the other haulers that are doing this work, this is a huge win. And by recycling with WM, instead of landfilling, you helped avoid 43 million tons of CO2 emissions, which is equivalent to driving more than 107.6 billion miles. And you've also saved that amount of emissions equivalent to powering 5.4 million homes a year. So good job and thank you. And now I'll jump into our agenda for the hour. So we're going to go over recycling and what single stream is, also some pros and cons to single stream, talk about what the recyclable items are and how they're sorted, then some do's and don'ts for specific items and how they're sorted. I'll give you an overview of where your recycling goes to the material recovery facility. And I know Federal Waste goes to JMK Fibers, which is in Tacoma. And we also have the Cascade Recycling Center that we'll take a tour of on bullet point 5 there. We're going to take a little video tour of a recycling facility, and you can see how everything gets sorted in one quick 10-minute video. And last, we'll have some Q&A. If questions come up and you are curious about anything, I won't be able to see the chat, but you can type into the chat and Colleen will be able to share those with me. So you can either save them for the end, or if you are curious and there's a good call and answer time throughout the presentation, we'll talk about it. But let's go ahead and get started. So let's talk about why recycling matters. There are both environmental and economic benefits to recycling. So one of the big things that recycling does is it saves space in the landfill, and that can help reduce pollution and greenhouse gas emissions as well. It also prevents the wasting of materials that can be reused. Many materials can turn into brand new products, and we'll show you some of those, and it closes the loop. So it prevents us from continuously extracting virgin resources and virgin materials, and in that way, it helps us conserve our natural resources. In the process of recycling old materials into new products, it also saves energy and water compared to those that are being processed new. And lastly, it creates 9 times more jobs than landfilling. So there are many people that are impacted by the recycling industry. Here's just a bullet list of what I had said, and there are so many people that are in the industry, from people like me doing outreach to our amazing drivers who collect it, material facility workers like this person here, and countless end markets and retailers and people who are able to reuse and deliver these goods back into our society. So it's a huge win to incorporate recycling into our infrastructure for many, many reasons, and we do see it as a valuable commodity. Um, Here are some of those commodities. Why should we recycle these materials specifically? Plastic bottles can turn into clothing is one really cool fact. I am actually wearing a shirt made of recycled plastic water bottles. It's very soft and nice, and there's a lot of athletic wear retailers that are getting into turning plastic bottles into recycling, like Lululemon, Athleta, a lot of other retailers I can't remember off the top of my head, but there are many people who are creating these kinds of plastic clothes. And again, very soft. I feel great in this. And then, of course, aluminum cans, these can be turned into new products in 60 days. So I have this energy drink here. This can, when I recycle it, and it goes through the whole process, will be back on the shelf within 60 days, housing a new product. It's one of those things that can be infinitely recycled. It's an amazing thing to put back into the system. So in that way, of course, we're not mining for the ore to make new aluminum out of. It's just one of those things that's really easily melted down and responds so well to being sorted in the recycling facilities. And then, of course, paper. Today's news can become a new cereal box, and paper can be turned into so many different things. And it's a very interesting material that we'll get into in a bit. Its fibers are, continuously getting shorter, so it can turn into a really, nice paper, and kind of keeps degrading and turns into something like napkins. And then eventually we can compost those and they go into the soil. And there are many other products too that turn into new items. Of course, glass is really important. It's a very important thing to recycle, as there is a global sand shortage. I'm not sure many people know that, but specific sand is used to make glass items, that, like my glass of water here. And when I'm able to recycle this glass mason jar, it's going to be saving sand for those communities that exist on that specific kind of sand that we use to build things and to drink things out of. And I'm excited to show you how those are sorted. So next, we'll move into single stream recycling, and just to clarify what it means. So every time we mention single stream recycling, we're talking about the practice of putting those materials into your curbside bin. So the recycling cart you roll out to the curb every week, that is single stream recycling. And the system has many pros to it. For instance, it is very convenient. I find it much more easy to put everything into one bin, and instead of having to sort different materials as we had to in the past. And it's really convenient not only for people, but also for the drivers and the trucks on the road. We actually had, at one point, there were recycling trucks that had 3 different compartments. So when we would separate our materials into different compartments out and leave them on the curb, one truck would come to pick up all 3, but they would have different compartments that filled up irregularly. So glass would get filled up first, for example. Then they'd have to go offload the glass and then come back, even though their paper or their plastics containers weren't full. So it was pretty inefficient, and now it's much easier. We also have a compactor, so it pushes it in and it saves space inside of the truck, far fewer trips, and makes it efficient for saving gas as well. But then there's also some challenges that we face with recycling, and that is called wish cycling. Now, my mother is on this call, and she has seen me grow up and do a lot of wish cycling in the past. So I'm really grateful that I have this job, and I have the role of explaining to people what we can and can't recycle and why. Wish cycling is a practice that, we just throw something in the recycling because we wish it was recyclable. But in reality, in the curbside bin, it might not be. I will go through our do's and don'ts, and you'll see some examples of, what items I might be referring to. And there's also contamination is one of those cons that comes with single stream recycling. Maybe it's too easy and we just are like, put it in the bin, but there's contamination that comes from certain materials not being allowed, like hoses and wires and plastic bags. There's also contamination from food and water. So making sure that your recyclable item is as clean as it possibly can be. We're looking for 90% of that to be clean, like a peanut butter, the infamous peanut butter bottle or jar is always going to have a little bit of peanut butter residue in there. But something you can do is soak that jar, shake it up, and if you see it's still not coming off, just let it sit for a while. It will make it to the recycling sooner or later. And just try and make sure those are clean so you don't contaminate other items that are going through the recycling center. And to piggyback off of that slide, just why can't I recycle everything? Here is like 3 main reasons for why we can't recycle everything. First is the material. Can we manipulate this material into a new product? The material is massively important because, for example, a paper towel is something we don't take in the recycling because its material is physically difficult to be recycled and turned into something new at that point. There's many materials like waxy coated boxes that, like a milk carton, for example, those are being phased out in certain areas. And I don't believe they are taken in federal way because they have a waxy coating and a paper coating, or like a Starbucks cup. They have a waxy coating and a paper coating, and that material is hard to separate the wax and the paper or, the other plastics inside of it. So we are still trying to isolate which materials are going into the curbside bin. But that's not the only thing. There's also the markets. Does anybody want this material? Can they turn it into something new? That is one of the biggest things. There are, there's supply and demand in all these different areas, but if there is a market that's willing to accept a material, then there usually will be a collection area or, our own blue bins that we can accept this material and ship it to them so they can turn it into something new. But if it doesn't have a market and it comes to the recycling center, it's just going to be kind of sitting in these lovely bales that you see, and it won't be able to move forward. Styrofoam is something that is asked about a lot, and we can't usually recycle it here because it has a low quality of a material, and it also has a low market demand. But there are some companies and programs that can collect styrofoam as well. So it all depends on where the market is. And of course, the more we support these markets, the bigger those markets will get and the demand will increase. So it's always important to support recycled items whenever you see them to create those markets. And lastly, sortability. So often the answer of whether you can recycle something is yes, but you must, under some condition, separate out the different materials. So we do that in a giant machine setting that you'll see on the video tour. And those machines are able to isolate those materials and then distribute them to the correct manufacturers. All right. And if there's any questions here, feel free to put them in the chat and we'll see if there's a time to answer those. I also, at this time, want to share, this is where we'll move into the do's and don'ts section. And I have this picture up here. I would like to see if you can spot what's wrong with this picture. And it will come back to us at the end of the tour to see if you can spot what's wrong. But if you look at it, you're like, this cute family, why are you picking on them? They're perfect. They are perfect, but not their recycling practice. So it's a really small one, and this is going to help you become an expert. I'll just leave it here for a moment before we move into which items go into the material recovery facility. Let's see if we have any eagle-eyed folks here. All right. So here's our do's and don'ts. Yes to plastic containers. Do recycle plastic containers. We recommend that people focus with plastic containers on the shape and not the number of the plastic. So what you're seeing on the screen here is the best representation of all the plastic that we'd like to collect. If you're not seeing it here, it's unfortunately not something that can be recycled curbside. So, or in your single stream bin. With plastic bottles, we do recommend having the screw caps off rather than on. This is due to many factors, but because the recycling cap is, it's just really small. It's smaller than the size of your fist. And that is a good rule of thumb, fist and thumb, to make sure what you're recycling is actually going to make it through the entire machine. So it's recommended to take off those bottle caps. And again, looking at the shape of the container, we have jugs and tubs and bottles. And on the right side, this is an example of what goes on at the Cascade Recycling Center in Woodinville. This is where we'll be touring in the video. And we have people sorting by hand different types of plastics. We also have optical sorters that push the plastic bottles. They're able to scan it and see that is a Coca-Cola PET bottle, and they'll be able to push it off with a puff of air, or again, sort it by hand. All right, now for plastic don'ts. Don't put plastic bags into your recycling at all, because these, as you can see on the screen on the left side, this is what happens when plastic bags get put into our machine. They are wrapped around one of our many machines in the material recovery facility, and it causes workers to have to stop the plant because the machines are actually all connected in some way. So when you stop the one area, you're going to shut down the other areas. So it makes recycling inefficient, and then the workers have to climb in and cut out the bags, and it happens all the time. So this is the biggest thing I'd like for you to take away, is that the recycling plant is operating, but it doesn't operate well when plastic bags are in there. So always make sure to leave your recyclables unbagged, free, loose, and actually not even in paper bags. Just put the items loose in the bin. Do take them to your grocery store for special collection. So kind of an example of what it is right now and what it could be is going to a recycling program for special collection. Many grocery stores have special collection areas for recycling or for plastic bags. They don't always look like this on the screen. I have one at my local grocery store that's just it's just a giant box and it has a hole in it, and I just put my recycling in there. So ask your grocery store worker, do you have a special collection for this? And then they will usually say yes and show you where it is. And of course, again, if you have any questions, let me know in the chat, or any coming up about anything we've talked about so far.
Yes, there is a question about laundry bottle caps. Should they be separated and also put in, or?
Laundry bottle caps, I believe they can actually go together. I hope I'm not speaking incorrectly, but I'm gonna say maybe it's best practice to remove all caps. But those recycling or those bottle caps are bigger than the size of your fist usually. So I'm thinking they may be able to get sorted. If there's, I might have to do a little research on that after the video plays, or as the video is playing, so I can get a definite answer. But my gut is
also when we send out the video, we can also, like, any research or any things that come up, we can also send that along as well.
Oh, that'd be great. Okay, yeah, I need to get a definite answer on that. I'm pretty sure my gut is leaning yes if it's screwed on, but I'm not 100% sure. So I'll have to find that out while the video is going. Thank you. Good question. Okay, so one more thing on plastic is don't recycle single-use plastics. These are plastics like clamshells. It's kind of a hard picture to see, but those are clamshell plastics and single-use cutlery. These are not able to be recycled curbside because they are typically made with plastics that are too small and they will get lost in the machine. They also might be made of a material that isn't collected among other materials. Plastics are isolated and separated by different shapes and colors. So for this reason, we just based on material and size, we are not able to collect single-use plastic in the curbside bin. Do find methods of reusing single-use items or avoiding them altogether. It's not easy to do that, and it might not be available near you, but it is definitely something to move towards as we prioritize our ecosystems and, of course, avoiding excessive plastic that's single use. All right, now for paper, you can recycle all paper. For some reason, it is still the most recyclable material that most often ends up in the landfill. It doesn't actually matter if there are staples or paper or metal coiling, tape, paper clips, you can throw your paper in the bin. When paper is recycled, the paper is added to a giant mixer that it's like a slurry of water and all of that paper, where the individual fibers of the paper soak up the water and begin to get broken down. And anything that isn't paper, like a window from an envelope or staples, they will either float or sink, and then they'll be sorted out. So when it gets to our end stream market, they are doing all of the manipulation necessary to isolate the paper fibers. So tape, you can, feel a sigh of relief. I felt a collective sigh of relief that you can put them into the bin. Of course, it's great if you can recycle those things yourself, or not recycle, sorry, if you can take off tape yourself, that's always awesome and helpful. So if that's your practice, don't let me stop you. I still do it. I still take off the tape, but you can feel relieved knowing that those staples and other things you may have questioned for all of time, they will be getting sorted out.
So Rhianne, real
Mhm.
quick, this is an example to me of like how technology changes on what you can and cannot recycle. Back in probably the early 2000s, I remember working in a place that we had a staple remover right next to the recycling bin because we could not put staples into the bin. So we had a little staple remover that was part of the little tool to use before you put it in there. But now the MRFs, they have the material recycle recovery facility. They have, magnets. They use technology to be able to sort things. So there's some things that maybe if you have been recycling for decades that you're like, wait a minute, I used to have to do this. Sometimes technology makes it so that it makes it easier to recycle, so that we don't have to remove labels or have to like take staples out, things like that.
Yes, that is so well explained, and also a fun flashback. Because yeah, I remember doing that in my class, just taking off those staples. It was a fun job, but also it's really amazing to see how the technology's improved. And there's a lot of new technology that's coming into Washington State, WM owned material recovery facilities. So it's only going to keep getting better and hopefully more easy for everyone.
And we have a question in the chat, Rhianne, about grocery receipts that are made of the thermal paper. So not like your just average paper like envelopes and office paper, but it's the thermal
Right.
paper.
The thermal paper, and that often has if you draw an X with your finger, it shows up as that like carbon copy. Yeah, those are garbage. Unfortunately, those aren't paper, so they will have to be thrown away. There are some places like there's a co-op around where I live called PCC, and you've probably heard of PCC, but they had used a different type of receipt tape. And I think that it's actually compostable, which is exciting. So again, another example, hopefully technology catches up here and we don't have to keep using that kind of single-use landfill material. And yeah, unfortunately, that's not a paper that gets recycled. But these kinds of papers that are traditional paper, that aren't even the Ritz box there it's kind of waxy and coated looking, but it's actually still cardboard that can be recycled. So when you have like a waxy thing like a milk carton or a kind of shiny thing like a receipt tape, those are indicators that they may not be able to be in the recycling. And unfortunately, yeah, these are fortunately / unfortunately in your curbside bin, these are all the things that can go in for paper, all of the available options. And then when it gets sorted, it's on the right side. This is just a snapshot of one of the machines. So it surfs over those spinning discs and turns turns itself onto different conveyor belts, and anything that's not paper is going to fall through some holes and make its way through either a different process or be sorted out. And this is also one more important time to shout out the size of your fist. When paper is cut up into really small pieces too, it's going to make its way through holes and fly around like confetti, which brings me to my next slide. Let's see if I can click that slide. Don't. Shredded paper. So shredded paper is one of those things that we can't recycle curbside because it is too small, and it's becomes more like confetti when it goes through the belt. But there are some really cool things you can do for reuse and recycling. You can either take them to recycling collection events. There are, we have done an event with the City of Federal Way where we had a couple of large collection trucks come, and they take and shred paper on site. So you can shred documents with them, and then they can collect your shredded paper. Or you can find some very interesting methods for reusing. So I did some searching. I found people that use this for insulation for their chicken eggs. Instead of like hay, this works just the same. You can also make them into paper. You can use them for stuffing packages and just finding other ways of using them. Otherwise, some people, if it's, at the end of the day, it's likely going to go to the trash, unfortunately. All right, so moving on to a different object, metal. For metals, you can recycle aluminum, tin, and tin cans. If you'd like to include the lids on the tin cans, we just recommend that you press in the lid and crimp it so the lid doesn't fall out. And for other types of metals, like large cast iron pans, those can actually be recycled as well. However, if you have any pots or pans, it's best to donate them to a Goodwill or another thrift store or Salvation Army. And it's it kind of, the reason we only have cans on here because we don't want to set the precedent that like all types of pots and pans can be recycled. So if you have very specific pots and pans that are just fully metal, check to see where you can donate those. On the right side of the screen, you'll see a magnet that is pulling over tin cans to sort them, and you'll see that in the video. And we also have something called a reverse eddy current that sorts the aluminum cans, and they will pop over this little fence, or this invisible fence. Essentially, they'll just like start jumping off of this conveyor belt, and that is due to the reverse eddy current. That's very special, and you'll see that in the videos shortly.
Hey, Rhianne. Really quickly, since we're just talking about shredded paper right before this, somebody had a question, and I believe this is the answer. I mean, the question is the first, that can shredded paper go in the food and yard waste bin? And I believe the answer is no for that as well.
Yeah, we try to avoid that. I know that there are home composting people who do that as well. So the big difference between shredded paper and other paper that can go in is that it's food soaked paper. So cardboard pizza boxes that are covered in oil, or a takeout box that's actually just made of cardboard covered in oils and sugar and food, that can all go into the compost. But shredded paper is not accepted in the compost and yard waste. It just needs to be kind of remade or repurposed into something. And there are, again, people who do home composting with their own shredded paper piles, or they'll find other methods of reusing them that I think are much more beneficial than putting them into the compost. It's a good question. It's a hard one. Here's my wish cycling pass coming out. I really wish we could just compost it, but that is not the practice we recommend. Good question.
And there's also an option if you want, instead of shredding your paper at home and then trying to find a home for it, you can take your papers to a shredding event or a location that does shredding or has a shredding service.
Right.
Because it's kind of like the plastic bags. When you put them at a grocery store, those things are not going to be sent to this sorting facility because they don't need to be sorted. They're only plastic bags. They don't have to be separated from each other. So that means those plastic bags can go directly to a place to get remanufactured into something. And then with the shredding, because they have their own shredding equipment, they know they cut it a certain way so that it can be recycled. It's technically shredded, but it's not like cross-cut confetti where then it's like, how do you make this into anything else? It's like they are shredding it, but they are making it so that it can be recycled. It just
Right.
won't go to the sorting facility. They'll just send it directly to a location to be recycled into something.
Awesome. Thank you. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's really helpful to realize like how come it can't be recycled? Thank you for explaining that.
Yeah. And then we have another question about the cans about if you have to take off labels or not.
We do recommend taking off the labels. It's just a best practice, but I know that many people still will put them into the bins without removing the labels. Um, for certain materials, I think it is okay to leave some tape and some residue on, but it is helpful to remove the labels. It's not 100% necessary because at the end of the sorting process, they will get sorted out through, similar to the paper and how the metals from the staples and things will get sorted out. Same with glass. Those will get sorted out before, but it is very helpful to remove them. Yeah, it's all those labels and those little tiny pieces of plastic, they just add up and we realize like, wow, maybe this is not the most efficient way to use our resources, but that is another good question. Yeah, they would be best practice is just to remove them. All right, I'm gonna move forward because we only have a couple of slides left here before the video tour, and then I will save some more Q&A for the end. But thank you so much for asking really fantastic questions. This has been really great so far, and I'm glad you're all cued in. So one of the last materials that we have are don't recycle batteries and electronics curbside. It should go without saying that these can be dangerous if they are collected inside of a recycling facility, but they're better used in other places. You can take them to specific locations for recycling. So for batteries, there are collection center, like little depots at the Federal Way City Hall, which is great, and the Federal Way Community Center. Another best practice to tape the positive side of the battery. If a lot of batteries are sitting together and maybe they're moving through transportation or something, they can cause a spark or a charge. So definitely tape the positive side of the battery, and that will ensure there's not a reaction. And then you can also donate electronics. You can either bring them back to a purchasing site, or you can go on the King County website, What Do I Do With? They are an amazing resource for hard to recycle appliances, many different items, furniture, anything you can think of will be on the King County What Do I Do With website. And I'm going to show you that in a moment. Then last, before we get to the King County website, here is glass. So glass is shattered as it's collected. These are all the different types of glass that you can recycle. We are looking for things that we call single-use glass. When you have things like a cup that's made of glass or windows that are made of glass, unfortunately, those are not able to be recycled curbside because they're made of different materials. So what we're looking for is single-use glass that can be repurposed and given a new life. And it's shattered. So I said that really quickly, but it is shattered in the process of being recycled. It's something that you don't have to feel bad about. If you have a broken wine bottle or something, you can still put those into your single stream cart. And on the right side, this is what a pile of glass looks like in the material recovery facility we'll see. This is, it's unsorted right here, I believe. So it's, there's a lot of different plastics and papers, and you'll see that in the tour, but this is how it comes to us, and then it gets processed and cleaned and goes away to become a new thing. And now for don'ts, like I mentioned, don't try to recycle glass cups and windows, but you can dispose with construction removal or leave in the garbage. So for broken glasses, you can kind of, wrap them up with paper, put them in the garbage. And the reason again is because they're made out of different qualities of glass, and that's hard to find different melting points. So glass recyclers are only looking for single stream glass. And then window glass is made from a very different type of, recycle, or sorry, it has a different melting point, and it's made of just different pieces and bits, like there might be plastic as well. So you can go to the King County website and search, what do I do with? This is a screenshot I took. Says, what do you want to get rid of? Mixed glass, window glass, and then it has pickup, mail-in, or drop-off options, and it actually had some results. Of course, you'll search by zip code, but this is an amazing resource for a lot of materials that you may have a question of, how do I recycle these? So yeah, that is for the items, and I'm going to save Q&A for the end just because I want to tell you about the recycling centers before we start the video. So where does our recycling currently go? For Federal Way, they go to JMK Fibers, and this is a giant, beautiful, massive recycling facility in the Port of Tacoma. It is a state-of-the-art facility that sorts and processes recyclables to definitely reduce landfill waste and ensure that they're made into new products. This facility collects from King, Kitsap, Pierce County, and other states. It's located on I-5 or near I-5 and near the port. It has railroad access. It has a lot of different ways to get materials in and out, and it is, again, massive. It has processed 780, or it does process 780 tons of recycling per day, which is amazing. And 1 ton is 1 elephant. So if you can envision 780 tons of recycling per day is definitely extraordinary, which is roughly 20 pounds per second. And it's on a 10-acre site operating in a 90,000 square foot building. It has some really amazing equipment. There's pre-sort lines and optical auto sort lines. So this gentleman is trying to operate the machine that will sort out certain materials like papers and plastics. And it has really high accuracy. So it's quite special to see it in action, little robot hands moving around. It has 6 optical scanners for paper. It has tangler screens, which is amazing, plastic bags, and wires and hoses. Those are called tanglers because they tangle around the equipment, if you remember that picture of plastic bags. So it has a tangler screen, which is so cool. And then it has other great material processing equipment that you'll see in the other facility. And then there's Cascade Recycle Center. This is in Woodinville, Washington. It receives material from King, Snohomish, and Skagit County. It was built in 2003, and this facility is sorted or helps sort the material with people and with machines. So there's a lot more human interaction here, but it's actually receiving upgrades this year that kind of coincides with an announcement for America Recycles Day, but WM is investing in, I believe it's $56 million to the recycling centers that it owns and operates to receive these kinds of upgrades that the JMK Fibers facility has gotten. So recycling is going to get much more efficient, much quicker, and it's just going to be really amazing to see all this technology. So the video that I'm going to show you next, it's just around 10 minutes, which will leave us around 5 for Q&A. And yeah, you'll see the whole process in action. Now, the video is, it gets a little loud at times, so I just want to warn you of that. And there is a closed caption option on Zoom. If you want to turn that on for yourself, I think that's really helpful because our video does not have closed captions, but Zoom does pick up things pretty well. So again, thank you so much, and we'll enjoy the tour that my colleague Shannon had recorded this spring for you.
Hi everyone, we are here at the WM Cascade Recycling Center. What we are looking at right now is that end product of broken glass. As you can see, there are a few
Oops, sorry about that.
other different materials in there, like plastic bottle caps, some paper. So that's why we really try to emphasize not recycling anything that's smaller than the size of your fist. All right, and now we're gonna head this way and go inside the Cascade Recycling Center. All right, so what we are looking at now is called the tipping floor. Over here on the left side of the tipping floor is a pile of recyclable materials that comes from our commercial sites. Over here is a pile of recyclable materials that comes from residential sites. Down below, we have a conveyor belt that helps to spread out these materials across the tipping floor so that these piles don't get too large. As you can see, we have different construction tools that help to put the materials on the conveyor belt, which then takes them throughout the Cascade Recycling Center. So here you can see some recyclable materials headed up to the first pre-sort line. All right, and now we are gonna head down to see this very first pre-sort line. So as you can see here, we have folks who are separating out contamination. So contamination are materials that are not actually able to be recycled that make it into the recycling bin. So they're pulling out things here that are similar to what we call tanglers. So tanglers are things like plastic bags or holiday lights that can get wrapped around our machinery and make it far less effective and efficient. So they're pulling out any contamination here and making sure that the recycling is as clean as possible. Behind this pre-sort line, we have a set of spinning discs. So these spinning discs back there are sorting out paper materials from the rest of our recycling. All right, and now we're gonna head over here to another set of spinning discs. So these spinning discs here on the left, they are actually paused at the moment, but what will happen is that cardboard will surf right over the top of those spinning discs while other recyclable materials will fall below. So as you can see, this is a really great example of why we don't want things like plastic bags and other tanglers going in the recycling, because they get wrapped around and make these spinning discs far less efficient. Over here on my right, we have another set of spinning discs. They are stopped at the moment, but this is where smaller paper items, so things like office paper as well as envelopes, will get sorted out from other recyclable materials. And then here behind me, so this is where that cardboard that comes from the spinning discs heads up to their quality control station. All right, and as we head down here, we're gonna see another pre-sort line. So this is where we typically have folks sorting out that cardboard from any contamination. So they want to make sure that that cardboard is as clean as possible before it even makes its way to the spinning disc. Here's another shot of that tipping floor. All right, and we'll make our way this way. So the Cascade Recycling Center is open 5 days a week for 24 hours a day. We have a couple shifts of folks who come in during the day to help us sort the recycling, as well as a maintenance team that comes at night to make sure all of our machinery is working well and is clean. All right, so as we make our way down this way, we're gonna see some quality control lines. So this is where all of the recycled materials that have gone through those spinning discs, for example, this is our cardboard quality control line. So here we have folks giving it one last final pass, making sure it's all clean, recyclable material, it's all clean cardboard, no contamination, no plastic bags are in there. Just one last quality control check before we send these materials to be baled. And behind me, you may hear a few sounds of puffing air. So that is what we call our optical sorter. So when our optical sorter detects a plastic bottle, a PET bottle, it'll go ahead and release a puff of air, which sends all of those plastic bottles over here. And you can see them falling, and they'll make a big pile of plastic PET bottles. All right, over here we have what we call our reverse eddy current doing its magic. So the reverse eddy current separates aluminum cans. So as you can see, when the aluminum cans make their way over that conveyor belt, the reverse eddy current shoots them up and separates them from the rest of the material. All right, and as we previously mentioned, PET and plastic bottles are sorted out by our optical sorter, but we also accept different types of plastic. So up here, we have a station where folks are manually sorting out plastic jugs. So on this side, we have things like laundry detergent plastic bottles. And then on this side over here, we have folks sorting out things like plastic milk jugs. And down here, we have one more quality control line. So as you can see, there are a few different bins on either side of those spokes. And what those are for is that, you know, perhaps something isn't necessarily cardboard, it shouldn't be going in the cardboard baler, but it's still recyclable. So we want to make sure that any recyclable material is still put in the recycling. They also have garbage bins there for any contamination that's made it on. All right, so you may have noticed that over here, it got a bit louder. And that's because this is where we sort our recycled crushed glass. So on the left-hand side over there, you can see a conveyor belt taking recycled crushed glass up to a vacuum. And this is the vacuum up here. So what that is doing is sorting the recycled glass from anything like paper or plastic bottles that might have made their way in there. On the right-hand side is our clean crushed glass after it's gone through that vacuum. And so this is our final product that's going to make its way out to the pile of crushed glass. So that crushed glass is then put on trucks as it is and sent to the end market, which is in Seattle. So it's a very local end market. This machine here on our right is where the glass is actually crushed. So it's crushed in there and then sent down below on that conveyor belt, which is a little bit difficult to see. Over here we have our spinning magnet that you can see. The spinning magnet sorts out tin cans from the rest of the material. So as you might be able to see, it'll pick up those tin cans and spit them out on the other side. Then down here we have what we like to call our paper magnet. Of course, it's not actually a magnet, but what it is a very steep conveyor belt with small suction holes in it. So those holes will pull small pieces of paper all the way up the conveyor belt and send other types of material rolling back down the conveyor belt. All right, and down here you might be able to tell it's getting a bit louder, and that's because we are getting near what's called our baler. So this is our baler machine, and what it does is put all of the end product recycled materials, so what we're seeing right now are aluminum cans, and it'll put all of these aluminum cans into a bale, which is what you're seeing behind there. Big rectangular kind of box squares. Once these bales are completed, they are then loaded onto trucks and taken to the final end market. Once they reach their final end market, these bales and materials will be created into something new, and then the whole recycling process starts over again.
Okay, so thank you very much for your participation today. I will now open it up to Q&A and also re-ask that question. What do you think is wrong with this picture? But yeah, please let me know if you have any questions about the tour or any other questions about recycling. Actually, while we think about that, I did do some research on the two questions for the laundry detergent lids. So it is okay to screw on those laundry detergent lids, and they're larger plastics, they're larger than the size of your fist. As long as they're screwed on your laundry detergent tub, they can all make their way through. And yeah, so sorry that I didn't have that completely confirmed and firmed up before presenting, but it is safe to do that. And shredded paper is also no longer accepted in compost because it was often contaminated with plastics and things like receipt tape. So no shredded paper in the compost. You can still do it at home if you're confident in your paper source. Yeah, if you have any ideas of what's wrong with this picture, and if has anyone shared anything in the chat or any other questions, Colleen? Oh, I think you're on
There are
mute.
some ideas in the chat, yes.
Okay,
Can you see the chat?
I don't see the chat, unfortunately.
All right, so someone said maybe green plastic bags, someone says bags, someone says looks like they're recycling tissue or paper towels, and someone says in this picture looks like dad's including paper towels.
That's right. So
And the question is,
other
is she
one.
holding in one hand, maybe there's a plastic bottle, but is another one glass?
Yes, so these look like they're both plastic, but I was looking at the yellow cups. Those may not be recyclable. They look like single-use, very thin plastic cups, similar to like a clamshell. Those will kind of fly around that recycling center, become a nuisance, but also there may not be an end market for those. We don't include them in curbside. So that is one issue. And then, yeah, eagle eye people here. That looks like tissue paper, right? He's shredding like very malleable paper and putting it all in one bin. So I got this as kind of a stock image to use, and I thought it was really cute. But then Colleen and I looked at it and we're like, let's see if people can figure out what's going on here, why this is not a great image, a great example. So
I'm not sure why there's two bins like right next to each other.
It's not single stream. There's a lot going on here.